Since the original launch of the K1, Creality was hit with a wave of challenges that shaped future requirements. Most of us know about the tremendous number of issues related to the K1, whether it was the extruder or the multitude of Klipper issues. It was nothing short of a mountain to climb. But while unfortunate, all of the hate and criticism that Creality received was very well deserved. Creality faced these issues head on, and I personally believe that they came out ahead. Based on the Ender 3 series, the CR10 series, and the subsequent K1C, all of those printers are remarkable. So fast forward to today, where we have the K2 Plus with the CFS here for me to share with you. So to start, I simply want to share the basic specs and features that you guys might be interested in. I believe Creality advertises faster velocities and accelerations, but we all know how little advertising numbers actually weigh in. That being said, in my practical testing, I do believe that this K2 Plus prints a little faster than my K1Cs. However, I don't think it's anything very significant. And it's definitely not a game changer as compared to the original wave of Speedy Core XY machines. The K2 Plus is a 350mm3 build volume printer, and the increase in Z to me is kinda useless. However, the increase in X and Y actually allows me to fill the bed with more copies of a part when I'm batch printing for my online store. Beyond that, the increase on X and Y was specifically useful for me because there are some models that I print that I can only fit one copy of on the K1C. However, on the K2 Plus, I could easily fit 2 or even maybe 3 copies on the plate all at once. Now, typically, in my experience, when you increase the size of X and Y, that's going to add dilemmas related to the bed mesh that the printer can produce. And usually, those dilemmas translate to poor first layers. However, and I cannot stress this enough, but the K2 Plus produces the single best, most accurate first layers of any printer that I own. Even on my X1 Carbon, I often have too much squish on that first layer, and that is something that isn't present on the K2 Plus. The poop chute is in the center rear of the printer, just like the X1 Carbon, and as the K2 Plus is printing, if I'm in the other room, it is so quiet that I literally cannot hear it. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the CFS, because when it is activated and it is winding a spool either forwards or backwards, I definitely hear it. However, it's not that bad. Overall, the entire printing process of the K2 Plus and the CFS is relatively quiet. From a Klipper standpoint, we have the incremental Klipper upgrades that are probably already present in the K1, K1C, and K1 Max. One thing that stands out to me is the native integration of exclude object, which is going to allow you to cancel an object that fails without actually halting the entire print job. This is not a new Klipper feature, however, it is very happily welcomed. So the next bit of software to discuss is going to be the Creality Cloud application, and I'm going to do my best to keep this very brief. And just as a side note, I have an Android device. I do not have an iOS device, so I cannot test the iOS application, though I expect it to be the exact same. Unfortunately, the application is still mega littered with garbage that no one cares about. It is totally full of random models, whatever this Creality coin nonsense is, and it has some really weird community section. We've been begging Creality to do away with this for years, and they haven't been able to oblige. However, hear me out, because the printer control is an entirely different ballgame. It seriously looks like it was developed by an entirely new dev team, and I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was. It's sleek, fluid, intuitive, and overall it was just designed exceptionally well. You even have access to print from the 5GB of local onboard storage or a connected USB drive. The only thing I could not find was time lapses, and for that I needed to go into the Creality Print 5.1 software and download them from the Klipper interface. Now, as for Creality Print 5.1, it is a serious powerhouse. And I genuinely mean it when I say that right now, Creality Print 5.1 is probably my favorite slicer, which is saying something because if you look back 12 months ago, it was a steaming pile of garbage. When paired with any Klipper-based Creality product, Creality Print 5.1 multi-printer management is a dream. Selecting filament types, slicing, sending jobs to printers, pretty much everything you do in Creality Print 5.1 is seamless, and it will even warn you and notify you if you try to send a job to the wrong printer. For instance, if I tried to send a job for the K1C over to the K2 Plus. And again, managing the CFS couldn't be easier. One of the better features about Creality Print 5.1 is that you can import a Bambu 3MF project into Creality Print 5.1, and it seems like all of the slicer settings and profiles just import seamlessly. The only issue that I noticed is that it imported with the printer profile of whatever it was when the project was developed, so X1 Carbon or A1, and all you have to do is change that to K2 Plus. So while I still fully intend to use Orca Slicer for all of my non-Creality branded products, if I am using anything with a Creality branded printer, 5.1 makes everything so much easier. I do believe that this is the most advanced slicer available, and I could probably make an entire video surrounding the slicer, so if that's something that you guys are interested, do be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Alright, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. This is definitely something that we need to talk about. So I know everyone is going to want to know how the CFS pairs with the K2 Plus. That might actually be the only thing that you guys care about. And the short answer is, in my current testing, when you use the CFS with the right material, it pairs very well. The final product that you're gonna get off of the K2 Plus with the CFS is as good as anything that I printed on my X1 Carbon with the AMS. I honestly can't say that my multicolored prints with the AMS look any better or worse, and for that, I think it's a positive statement. I have never complained about the quality of prints that come from my AMS, and currently the CFS is sharing the same opinion. But when I deviated from the right material, all I had was nightmare after nightmare after nightmare, and nothing was working. It was a very bad experience. So what constitutes the right material? So, well, I want to caveat this statement because I've only had this printer for a week and a half now, and I do want to do more testing. But so far, I have had unlimited issues with cardboard spools and or spools that are very poorly wound from the manufacturer. I haven't been able to fully diagnose the problem yet. I don't necessarily think it is the CFS's fault, but I definitely don't think it's not the CFS's fault, if you know what I'm saying. I almost exclusively print with Polymaker, which I consider to be some very high quality material wound very well on cardboard spools. I have used Polymaker numerous times in my AMS. Again, I almost exclusively print with this material. And it is worth noting that I did not have even one single successful multi-material print while using this material. But again, I've only had this printer printing for roughly 75 hours. I definitely want to continue doing more testing. It's also worth noting that I used other cardboard spools from other various manufacturers and I had the same results. One of my failed print jobs was when I loaded up silk PLA into the CFS. Of course, it clogged the extruder as it was trying to pull out. That should have been expected. I've had that issue on the AMS. I don't know if you'll really ever be able to print silk PLA in a machine like this. So for that, I can't really knock Creality because that's just a hard test. While using these cardboard spools, I did notice that the printer was stringing tremendously, And also, the spool would bind up in the CFS, which was leading to constant extruder jams. These extruder jams would then not allow other filament to be loaded fully into the extruder. It wouldn't allow filament to be pulled out. It was causing a ton of different varying issues. The good news is, however, that nearly every single time that the printer had an issue, it caught the issue and it threw an error. It paused the print and threw an error. The bad news, however, is that none of these errors were recoverable. Meaning I was required to completely abandon the print job and start from scratch. And obviously that wastes time, material, causes frustration, and pretty much everything else you can think of. I had to completely disassemble the extruder at least 15 times in order to remove a piece of filament or clear some other kind of error. When using these cardboard spools, sometimes the CFS would rewind the filament so tightly and use so much torque that the filament would bind in the CFS by pinching in on itself with the other filament on the roll. And of course, when it pinches in on itself like that, the next time the CFS needs to load that filament into the extruder, it has no ability to do so. Eventually, I just stopped counting the errors because they genuinely seem to be never ending. So at this point, I began to lose hope. I had no idea what to do. So I just loaded up some AnchorMake PLA. AnchorMake PLA is probably the highest quality material that I have in the studio. It is still wound on plastic spools. The winding is very tight, very precise. It is probably S-tier winding. It is high quality material in general, just pristine stuff. And with this new spool type, the first print I threw at the CFS was 26 hours and nearly 1,000 filament changes. This print finished absolutely flawlessly on the first time. It looks beautiful. Though one thing I did notice is that the default filament flush values could probably be due to be increased by either 10 or 15% because they were blending just a little bit. The good news is this is very easily done within Creality Print 5.1. It's just a few button clicks. While using this AnchorMake PLA, the second model I printed encountered two issues. Well, really one issue. The first issue is that the CFS thought that the spool wasn't properly rewound during a filament change. Once I noticed the issue, I checked the spool and in fact it was properly re-spooled. So I clicked resume and it went on its merry way. It must have been a false alarm. I would much rather a false alarm than an actual issue. The second issue, however, was actually real. And through all of the issues that I encountered, I genuinely forgot which issue this one was, but it did have negative consequences for the model. For some reason, when I cleared the error and resumed the print, the CFS did not load filament into the extruder, so it printed a whole layer without material. Fortunately, this wasn't enough to cause the whole job to fail. However, it left an obvious scar on the model skin. Like I said, I definitely want to do more multi-material testing with the CFS, but when you're using the right material, I have positive results. But very negative results when using the wrong material. Whatever that means, because haven't quite got to the bottom of that yet. So in terms of design of the CFS, it's nearly identical to the Bambu counterpart in almost every way. So each CFS unit has room for 4 1-kilogram rolls, and you can daisy chain up to 4 CFS units together, allowing for up to 16 materials to be plugged into a single K2 Plus. How much does an additional CFS cost? Well, that I don't quite know. The CFS has a rubber seal so it can stay as airtight as possible, and it also has a lock which allows the lid to stay shut. A very welcome upgrade is that the CFS lid has filament guides built into it. During the retraction and rewinding phase of a material change, these guides are going to prevent the filament from hopping over the spool wall and causing a catastrophic failure. I can confirm this has happened to me personally plenty of times on the AMS, and fortunately with the CFS, this is physically impossible. I also cannot make this video without simply saying the physical build quality of the CFS feels significantly higher quality than the hollow AMS. And when I loaded Creality branded PLA into the CFS, it properly recognized all of the NFC tags every time except once. Also, I don't even think that was a problem with the CFS. I think that NFC tag itself might just be broken because it wouldn't recognize it in any of the 4 slots. These NFC tags absolutely make printer setup and printing a lot more enjoyable. What's great is that even the single spool setup built into the K2 frame also has NFC support. So you don't even need a CFS to use the Creality PLA with NFC tags. A mega upgrade with the CFS as opposed to the AMS is that when you have to do disassembly on the AMS to clear snapped filament jams, that's a thing of the past. With the CFS, there is no disassembly. If you flip the unit over on its back, you have access to all of the PTFE tubes as well as the fittings. There is no more disassembly. This honestly might be the single best part about the CFS. All right, now I am not gonna sit and bake on this issue for too long, but this is something that seriously angers me with the CFS. The CFS uses the exact same very obscure 6-pin connector that the AMS uses, leading one to believe that they might be compatible. Or maybe I'm just crazy, but that's what I thought. So I let curiosity get the best of me. I took my AMS, plopped it down, I plugged it directly into my CFS, I plugged it directly into my K2 Plus, and I immediately started to smell something burning. You could imagine that the K2 Plus fried and burned my $400 Bambu Labs AMS. Do not connect these machines together unless you want to be in the same boat as me. All right, so what about single spool printing using the CFS? And this is actually the primary way that I'll be using the CFS, just to swap between different colors from one print to the next. Black this print, white next print, ASA this print, ABS the next. So I ran 10 different single spool print jobs ranging from 45 minutes all the way to 15 hours, probably averaging about 5 hours per print job. I printed in PLA and ASA. Also, I printed with plastic spools and I printed with cardboard spools. I only printed with the CFS, and the K2 Plus did not skip a single beat. Not a single error, and everything looks great, including the functional ASA prints that I use for my eBay store. I also sell PLA embossed card holders, which can oftentimes be a total nightmare for 3D printers. The K2 Plus handled these jobs perfectly. Now, if I had to make any complaints about the parts that came off of the K2 Plus, I might say that there is a little bit of Z wobble. Not every layer appears to be perfectly stacked on the one just before it, but again, these prints really do look great. And before I am to make any final judgments on this potential Z wobble issue, I'd love to hear from other creators whether they're having a similar experience. And if you're one to care about calibration cubes, mine measured 19.98 millimeters on X and 19.77 millimeters on Y. Overhangs are exceptional, but for some reason, the K2 Plus seemed to struggle with the tiny bridging test. And as for tolerance testing, I was able to successfully print down to 0.15 millimeters, though I wasn't quite able to move the 0.1 millimeter tolerance. But I'm not really sure if that's because I sliced this particular model at 0.16 millimeters or if the printer just simply can't handle tolerances that small. So I think that kind of covers most of it. Barring the incredible number of CFS errors that I encountered, Currently, I really am quite happy with the K2 Plus combo. As of yet, I don't quite know what the exact issue is, but I do know when I use high quality plastic spools, it works very well. Maybe the solution is to re-spool everything on cardboard onto plastic, or even use those plastic rings that you put around the cardboard spool. Hopefully soon enough, we're going to have some additional insight as to what's causing these issues, or maybe if it is specifically related to my unit. And of course, I will follow up with you guys if I learn more myself. And of course, if this video was at all helpful to you guys, please make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, put them down below. I'll be sure to answer them, and I will see you guys in the next video.